My daughter always treated me like I was the hired help. One day, right before Christmas, she told me, "My husband is bringing 32 of his friends over to celebrate here." She expected me to cook, clean, and cater to their every whim. I didn't say a word. I sold my things, left a note on the table, and by the time the guests arrived, I was long gone. Stick with my story to the end, and if it resonates with you, let me know what city you're hearing this from. I'd love to see how far my story has traveled. My name is Eleanor. I'm 64 years old, and until recently, I thought being a mother meant sacrificing everything for your children, without any limits. For decades, I lived by that belief, until my daughter Megan showed me that for some people, a mother's love is just a free service they can exploit without consequences. It was a Tuesday morning, December 23rd, when Megan walked into my kitchen the way she always did, without knocking, with that air of entitlement she'd adopted since marrying Derek 5 years ago. I was making breakfast, just like every morning since they moved into my house after their wedding. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they found a place of their own, but time had passed, and they had settled in perfectly to the comfort I provided. "Mom, I need to talk to you," Megan said, not even looking up from her phone. Her tone was the same one you'd use with a housekeeper. "Derek is bringing 32 friends over for Christmas tomorrow." I froze, spatula in hand, feeling like I'd just been slapped. 32 people in my house, without asking me, without consulting me, as if my home were a restaurant available for her whims. 32 people, Megan? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Don't you think that's a lot for a 3-bedroom house?" She finally glanced up from her phone with that annoyed expression I knew so well. "Mom, please don't be so dramatic. It's just one night. Besides, you're used to hosting big dinners. Remember all those times you cooked for Dad's work events when he was alive?" Oh, I remembered. I remembered every one of those nights, cooking for 20, 25 people, serving with a smile while my husband got all the praise for being a wonderful host. I remembered washing dishes until 3 a.m, collapsing into bed with swollen feet and cracked hands. I remembered, and that's why I knew exactly what Megan expected of me. "Megan, I didn't agree to this," I said, turning off the stove. "This is my house, and decisions about inviting people are made by everyone who lives here." Derek appeared just then, as if he'd been waiting for the perfect cue. Tall, with that air of superiority he'd perfected since getting his job at the law firm, he looked at me with that condescending smile I hated so much. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said, using my first name like he was doing me a favor. I overheard. "Look, I know it's a lot of people, but they're important contacts for my career. Some of them could help me get the promotion I'm after." "Perfect," I replied, drying my hands on my apron. "Then you can celebrate at a restaurant or an event hall." The silence that followed was deafening. Megan and Derek looked at each other with that complicit glance I had learned to despise, that silent communication that completely excluded me. "Mom," Megan sighed, as if talking to a difficult child. "Don't be difficult. I already told everyone it would be here. Besides, you cook better than any restaurant, and the house has that cozy Christmas vibe you love to create. That Christmas vibe, as if decorating the house, buying the gifts, preparing the food, and cleaning up afterward was something I did for fun, not because no one else ever bothered to lift a finger." "And what about me?" I asked. "Do you expect me to cook for 32 people, serve dinner, wait on your guests, and then clean up everything. Derek chuckled as if I'd said something funny. Come on, Eleanor. It's not that bad. Think of it as practice for when you have grandkids. Besides, we'll help. They'd help. The same empty promise as always. Like when they helped with Thanksgiving dinner by sitting in the living room while I did everything. Like when they helped with spring cleaning by watching TV while I dragged the vacuum cleaner around the entire house. It's settled then, Megan said, putting her phone away. Derek, get that list of things we need to buy. Mom, you'll need to go shopping today because you have to start cooking early tomorrow. She handed me a handwritten list. As I read it, I felt the air grow thick. Turkey for 32, glazed ham, 3 kinds of side dishes, assorted desserts, drinks for the whole night. The total cost would be at least $800, not to mention the gas, electricity, and the exhaustion of cooking for 16 hours straight. And who's going to pay for all this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Well, Derek cleared his throat. We're a little tight this month with Christmas gifts and the payment on the new car. But you have your pension, right? Besides, it's technically your house, so it makes sense for you to be the official hostess. The official hostess, as if I had a choice, as if my house hadn't been turned into a free hotel where they lived without paying for rent, utilities, or food. You didn't say anything about this when you moved in, I muttered, more to myself than to them. What did you say? Megan asked, annoyed. Nothing, I replied, folding the list. Nothing important. That afternoon, as I walked through the grocery store with a cart filling up with things I hadn't chosen to buy, for people I hadn't invited, paid for with money I had earned over 40 years of work, something inside me began to shift. I had raised Megan alone after her father died when she was 15. I worked double shifts as a nurse to pay for her college, her books, her clothes, her car. When she graduated, I lent her money for the security deposit on her first apartment. When she got married, I organized and paid for half of her wedding. And now, instead of gratitude, she treated me like her personal employee. As I paid the $837 for the groceries at the checkout counter, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to cook that dinner. I wasn't going to serve 32 strangers in my own home. I wasn't going to keep being the convenient mother who was there when they needed something and disappeared when she wasn't useful anymore. It was time for Megan and Derek to learn what it truly meant to be adults. That evening, while Megan and Derek went out to celebrate with friends, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the grocery bags I'd bought. The frozen turkey stared back at me from the counter, a reminder of the humiliation I had lived with for years, a humiliation I had accepted as my fate. But it hadn't always been this way. When Megan was little, after Robert died in that car accident that changed our lives forever, she used to help me in the kitchen. I remember her tiny hands trying to knead cookie dough, her laugh when flour dusted the whole table. In those moments, cooking together was our refuge, our special time. When did it all change? When did my daughter stop seeing me as her mother and start seeing me as her servant? I think it was gradual, so subtle I didn't notice until it was too late. It started in college, when she would only come home to have her laundry done and to pack up meals to take back to her dorm. It's just that you do it better than anyone, Mom, she'd say, and I'd feel flattered, needed. Then came Derek. At first, He seemed like a nice guy, polite, ambitious, but I soon noticed how he spoke to waiters in restaurants with a dismissive attitude that made me uncomfortable. I should have paid attention to those red flags, but I was so happy that Megan had found someone who seemed to love her that I ignored my instincts. When they announced their engagement, I offered to help with the wedding expenses. It was the natural thing to do, I thought. What a mother does. I didn't expect Derek to come back with a list of vendors that cost twice my initial budget, or for Megan to tell me that if I really loved her, I'd find a way to pay for what they wanted. I ended up spending $18,000 on that wedding. My emergency fund, the savings I had set aside for my retirement years, it all went to imported flowers, a designer dress, and a 3-week honeymoon in Europe. When I asked if they could help me pay back even a small part of it, Derek patiently explained that they were investing in their future, and that I, as a mother, should understand that their success would eventually benefit the whole family. Their success? Derek was making $60,000 a year as a junior associate at his firm, and Megan worked part-time at a boutique for $15 an hour. I, with my nurse's pension and remaining savings, had more financial stability than both of them combined. But when they came to me with tears in their eyes, explaining they'd run into some financial trouble and needed a place to stay temporarily, what could I do? She was my daughter, my only family. I opened my doors to them, gave them the master bedroom, and told them to take all the time they needed. That was 5 years ago. In those 5 years, they hadn't paid a single month's rent. They didn't contribute to utilities, groceries, or home maintenance. Derek had gotten that new car he talked about, a BMW that cost more than my annual salary when I was working. Megan bought new clothes every month, got her nails done religiously every 2 weeks, and they both went out to dinner at least 3 times a week. Meanwhile, I cooked, cleaned, did their laundry, and paid for everything with my $1,300 monthly pension. But what hurt more than the money was the way they talked to me. Derek never spoke to me directly unless he needed something. When he wanted breakfast before work, he'd tell Megan, "Tell your mom I need to eat something before 7:30, as if I were invisible, and Megan had adopted the same attitude. There were no more please or thank yous. Orders were delivered like royal decrees. "Mom, I need my black dress washed for tomorrow. Mom, we're out of the good shampoo. Mom, next time you're at the store, get those expensive cheeses I like." The last straw had been the week before when I came home from my monthly doctor's appointment to find Megan rearranging my bedroom. "What are you doing?" I asked, seeing my belongings scattered across the bed. "Derek and I thought it would be better if you moved into the guest room," she said, without stopping. "We need more space, and besides, that private bathroom would be perfect for when we have important guests." My bedroom, the room I had shared with Robert for 20 years, the room where I had mourned his death, where I kept our memories, where I had raised Megan as a baby. "Megan, this is my house," I said, feeling the blood rush to my head. "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. It's just a room. Besides, the guest room has a better view of the garden." I slept in my own room that night, but something had changed forever. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. A 64-year-old widow who had given everything for a daughter who no longer respected her. Now, looking at those bags of groceries for a Christmas dinner I hadn't chosen to host, I realized I had 2 options: continue being the convenient mother who let herself be walked all over or do something about it. I went up to my room and pulled a suitcase from my closet that I hadn't used since my honeymoon with Robert over 30 years ago. I placed it on the bed and slowly began to fold my clothes, feeling something I hadn't experienced in a long time: freedom. But before I left, I had to make sure Megan and Derek understood exactly what they were losing. Not just a mother, not just a free employee. They were losing the only person who had ever truly cared about them, and they needed to know it. On the morning of December 24th, I woke up before dawn, just as I had for the past 5 years, to make Derek's breakfast before he left for work. But this time was different. This time I knew it would be the last. As the coffee brewed, I heard his footsteps coming down the stairs. Derek appeared in the kitchen, adjusting his tie with that typical haste of someone who assumes everything will be ready without him having to ask. "Morning," I mumbled, pouring his coffee into the blue mug he preferred. "Thanks," he replied distractedly, checking his phone. "Hey, Eleanor, I'm leaving work early today to help with the party prep. My guests will start arriving around 6 p.m. His guests, in my house, as if he were the host and I were the hired help for the occasion. "What time are you planning to start cooking?" he asked, taking a sip of coffee. "Because the turkey will need at least 6 hours in the oven, and we want everything to be perfect." "Everything will be ready," I replied, and technically I wasn't lying. Everything would be ready, just not in the way he expected. After Derek left for work, Megan came down in her silk robe, the one that cost $200 and was bought with money she should have used to help with household expenses. "Mom, I need you to go buy flowers for the centerpiece," she told me, pouring herself a glass of orange juice. "Something elegant, none of those cheap supermarket flowers. Derek wants to impress his boss." "Of course," I replied, drying my hands on the apron I was wearing for the last time. Megan sat at the kitchen table, expecting me to serve her breakfast like every other day, but I didn't move. I just stood there, watching her, memorizing her face for when I would no longer see it. "Mom, my breakfast?" she asked impatiently when she noticed I hadn't moved. "Megan," I said softly, "have you ever wondered what would have happened if your dad hadn't died?" She frowned, annoyed by the question. "Why are you asking me that now? That's a weird question." "Just curious," I replied. "I think he would have been very disappointed in the woman you've become." Her expression changed instantly. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means he taught you to be independent, hardworking, and grateful. He taught you that respect is earned, not demanded." Megan stood up from her chair with that defensive attitude she adopted whenever someone questioned her behavior. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic. It's Christmas. We're supposed to be happy." "You're right," I said, taking off my apron and hanging it on the hook by the stove. "It's Christmas, and it's time I got a present too." I went up to my room and finished packing the few things that truly mattered to me. I had quietly sold some furniture during the previous week, contacting buyers I found online. The mahogany dining table I inherited from my mother sold for $800. The living room set Robert and I had bought for our first anniversary sold for $600. Various antiques and valuables I'd collected over decades of marriage, all sold to get the cash I needed to start over. In total, I had gathered $3,200. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for the plan I had been silently developing all week. As I came downstairs with my suitcase, Megan was in the living room, talking on the phone with one of her friends, laughing about something that clearly had nothing to do with the supposedly important Christmas preparations. Yeah, Derek invited 32 people, I heard her say. My mom is going to cook everything. It's amazing having someone who knows how to do these things. You know, having someone, as if I were a hired service, not her mother. I left the suitcase by the front door and went back to the kitchen. There, in the center of the table, where I served breakfast every morning, I placed the envelope I had prepared the night before. A white envelope with Megan and Derek, written in my neatest handwriting. Inside was the letter I had written and rewritten a dozen times, trying to find the exact words to explain what I could no longer endure. But next to the letter was something else, a fully itemized bill for every dollar I had spent on them over the last 5 years. The rent they never paid, $150,000 over 5 years. The utilities they consumed without contributing, $750 a month for 60 months, $45,000. The groceries I bought to feed 3 people when only one had a real income, $200 a week, $52,000 over 5 years. Gas for the car Derek used, but was registered in my name, $300 a month, $18,000. Home repairs needed due to the extra wear and tear of 3 adults living in a house designed for one, $12,000 over 5 years. The grand total was $277,000, over $250,000 I'd invested in 2 adults who treated me as if my only purpose in life was to serve them. In the letter, I explained all of this, but also something more important. I explained how I felt every morning waking up in a house that no longer felt like my own. How it hurt to hear Derek talk about me as if I were invisible. How it broke my heart to see my daughter turn into a woman who demanded instead of thanked, who took instead of gave. But most importantly, I explained that I would not be there when their 32 guests arrived. In the letter, I wished them luck hosting the dinner without me. I wished them luck cooking a turkey for 32 people when neither of them knew how to properly turn on the oven. I wished them luck explaining to their important guests why there was no food, why there was no hostess, why the house was practically empty, because that was the other surprise waiting for them. During the week, I had sold almost everything of value in the house. The specifying appliances, das good furniture, even the elegant curtains I had bought to make the house look more presentable for their friends. All I left was the basics, their bed, an old armchair, and the plainest dishes and glasses. I left the food I had bought the day before, of course, but uncooked. A frozen turkey, raw vegetables, ingredients that required hours of preparation and culinary skills neither of them possessed. As I walked toward the door with my suitcase, I could still hear Megan on the phone in the living room. Derek says his boss might make him a partner if tonight goes well, she was saying excitedly. Imagine me, married to a law firm partner. I smiled sadly. In a few hours, not only would Derek not be a partner, but he'd probably have to explain to his boss why he had promised an elegant dinner and delivered an empty house with raw food. Before leaving, I took the keys to the car Derek used, but was in my name. It was a 2015 Honda Civic I had bought used after his previous car was repossessed for missed payments. Another temporary loan that had become permanent. At 11 in the morning, I was on the highway, heading north toward a new life I had carefully planned over the last 2 weeks. I didn't look back once. My destination was a small town 4 hours away, where I'd found a 1-bedroom apartment for $950 a month. Small, modest, but completely mine. There, no one would expect me to cook for 32 strangers. No one would treat me like an employee in my own home. No one would take my sacrifices for granted. As I drove, I imagined Megan's face when she found the envelope that afternoon. I imagined Derek explaining to his 32 important guests why there was no dinner. I imagined both of them trying to figure out how they were going to survive without the woman who had been their financial and emotional safety net for 5 years. For the first time in decades, I truly smiled. It was 5:30 p.m. when Derek got home, expecting to be greeted by the delicious aromas of the Christmas dinner he had promised his guests. Instead, he was met with the absolute silence of a house that looked like it had been ransacked. His first reaction was confusion. The dining room furniture was gone. The beautiful living room set that had always been there no longer existed. The elegant curtains that framed the windows had been replaced by the basic blinds underneath. "Megan!" he shouted, dropping his briefcase on the floor. "What the hell happened here?" Megan ran out of the kitchen, her eyes red and swollen from crying. In her hands, she held the white envelope I had left on the table, crumpled as if she had squeezed it over and over. "She's gone," she sobbed, handing him the letter. "Mom's gone, and she took everything." Derek read the letter in silence, and I can perfectly imagine his expression changing from confusion to shock, from shock to panic. When he got to the itemized bill, the total of $277,000, his face went pale. "This has to be a joke," he muttered. "How could she leave today of all days? Did she know how important this dinner was for my career?" "Of course she knew," Megan yelled. "That's why she did it. She's trying to ruin us on purpose." Derek walked into the kitchen and found the second surprise. All the food was there, exactly as I had bought it. A rock-solid frozen turkey, unwashed vegetables, basic ingredients that required hours of expert preparation. "What time did you say the guests were arriving?" Megan asked, though they both knew the answer. "At 6, Derek replied, looking at his watch. "In half an hour." Megan opened the oven and stared at the frozen turkey as if it were an unsolvable puzzle. "How long does this need to cook?" "I have no idea," Derek admitted. "Your mother always handled this stuff." They tried looking it up online, but soon realized that a turkey for 32 people needed at least 8 hours to cook, and that was assuming they even knew how to prepare it, which they clearly didn't. "We can order pizza," Megan suggested desperately. "Pizza? For the head of the most prestigious law firm in the city?" Derek looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Pizza for a Christmas dinner I promised would be elegant and unforgettable." Megan started crying again. "This is your fault for inviting so many people without asking her first." "My fault?" Derek raised his voice. "It was your idea to use the house. You said your mother would be thrilled to cook." As they argued, the doorbell rang. It was 6 o'clock sharp, and the first guests were arriving. Derek straightened his tie and tried to force a smile before opening the door. There stood James Morrison, the senior partner of the firm, accompanied by his elegantly dressed wife. "Derek, my boy," Morrison said with a grin, handing him an expensive bottle of wine. "We've been looking forward to that home-cooked meal you told us so much about." "James, so good to see you." Derek tried to sound normal as he led them into the practically empty living room. "There's just a small delay with dinner." Morrison looked around, immediately noticing the lack of furniture, the absence of festive decorations, the silence that should have been filled with delicious smells. "Is everything all right?" Morrison's wife asked, glancing toward the kitchen, where she could see Megan desperately trying to do something with the frozen turkey. Before Derek could answer, more guests arrived. One after another, 32 well-dressed people, expecting a sophisticated evening, found a half-empty house with two visibly flustered hosts. "Where can we sit?" one of the guests asked, noticing there was no dining table. "Is there a problem with the oven?" another asked, seeing that there was absolutely no smell of cooking food. Derek excused himself and ran to the kitchen, where he found Megan trying to shove the frozen turkey into the oven, still in its plastic wrap. "Megan, you can't cook it like that," he whisper-shouted. "It's frozen, and it's in plastic." "Then you do it," she yelled back. "I don't know how to cook. I never learned because Mom always did everything." Morrison appeared at the kitchen doorway, concerned by how much time had passed without any food or drinks. "Derek, do you need a hand with anything?" he asked, and then he saw the chaos. The frozen turkey on the counter, the unprepared vegetables, two adults who clearly had no idea what to do. "The truth is, we've had a family emergency," Derek tried to explain, sweating visibly. "My mother-in-law, who was going to cook, had to leave for a medical emergency." Morrison frowned. "Can't we just order food from somewhere?" "It's Christmas Eve, Derek. Most restaurants are closed, but maybe—" Derek rushed to the phone and started desperately calling every restaurant he knew. The first problem was that it was Christmas Eve, and sure enough, most were closed. The second problem was that the few that were open couldn't prepare food for 32 people with half an hour's notice. Meanwhile, in the living room, the guests started talking among themselves. It was impossible not to notice that something was very wrong. There were no appetizers, no drinks being served, no music, none of the festive atmosphere Derek had promised. "Did you know they were moving?" Derek heard someone ask another, clearly referring to the lack of furniture. "This is bizarre," another voice commented. "Who hosts a Christmas dinner in an empty house?" Morrison's wife approached Megan with a worried expression. "Dear, are you all right? You look very upset." Megan, who could no longer hold back her tears, broke down. "My mother abandoned us today. She took all the furniture, all the prepared food, everything. She left us completely alone." An uncomfortable silence spread through the house. The guests began to exchange glances, finally understanding that they weren't in the middle of a temporary kitchen mishap, but a serious family drama. Morrison approached Derek, who was hanging up the phone after the 10th failed call to a restaurant. "Derek," he said in a low voice, "I think we should probably call it a night. You're clearly going through a difficult time." "No, James, please," Derek practically begged. "We can fix this. We just need a little more time." But Morrison was already motioning for his wife to get ready to leave. "Son, sometimes life puts us in situations beyond our control. I understand. But I can't keep 32 people waiting in a house with no food or even places to sit." One by one, the guests began to leave. Some were polite, making up courteous excuses. Others were more direct in their discomfort. But they all left, leaving Derek and Megan alone in their empty house, surrounded by raw food and broken dreams. Derek sat down on the one remaining armchair, his head in his hands. "My career's ruined," he mumbled. "Morrison will never take me seriously after this." Megan sat on the floor beside him, still crying. How could she do this to us? How could she be so cruel? But deep down, they both knew the answer. For 5 years, they had taken and taken without giving anything in return. They had treated the woman who loved them most like a hired service, not like family. They had assumed her unconditional love meant they could disrespect her without consequences. That night, for the first time in 5 years, Derek and Megan had to make their own dinner. They ended up eating peanut butter sandwiches, sitting on the kitchen floor, in a house that no longer felt like a home, but like the stage for their own arrogance. And 250 miles away, I was eating a simple but delicious meal in my new apartment, feeling for the first time in years that I was exactly where I belonged. 3 weeks after I left, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. Calls. I let go to voicemail. But I recognized the pattern. It was them, trying to reach me from different phones when they realized I had blocked their main numbers. Finally, I decided to listen to the messages. The first voice was Megan's, but it sounded different, broken, desperate, a far cry from the confident, demanding woman I had known for the last 5 years. Mom, please call me. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. We can't go on like this. Derek lost the promotion opportunity. Morrison told him he needs to show more responsibility before he'll be considered for partner. Please, just call me. The second message was from Derek, and his tone was different too. The condescending superiority he always used with me was gone. Eleanor, it's Derek. Look, I get that you're upset. Maybe we could have been more considerate, but abandoning us like that, without any warning, was going too far. Megan is a wreck. She's on antidepressants because she can't sleep. Can you at least tell us where you are? Antidepressants. The same Megan who had told me I was too dramatic every time I expressed my exhaustion or frustration. The messages continued for days. At first, they were demands disguised as concern. Then, they turned into genuine pleas. Finally, the message I had been waiting for arrived. It was from Megan, and she was crying as she spoke. Mom, we had to sell the car, the Honda that you bought. Derek said, it's technically yours, but we sold it because we didn't have money for the insurance and the repairs it needed. We got $200 for it. We also had to take out a loan to pay the utility bills because we had no idea they cost so much every month. The apartment we found is Kinder's $200 a month, and it's tiny and ugly, but it's all we can afford. She paused to blow her nose, then continued. Derek is working extra shifts on weekends at a smaller law office to make extra money. I got a job at a coffee shop, but they only pay me $12 an hour, and my hands are getting ruined from all the cleaning I have to do. $12 an hour. The same Megan who had scoffed at any job that paid less than $20 an hour because it was beneath her. Mom, her voice broke completely. I didn't know. I didn't know how much you did for us. I didn't know how much money you spent, how much work it was to maintain a house, how much everything cost. I thought it was easy for you because you always seemed to handle it so effortlessly. There it was, the admission I had been waiting 5 years for. It wasn't that they hadn't noticed my work. It was that they assumed it was easy because I had never complained loudly enough. The message went on. Derek and I have been talking a lot about what happened. He admits he treated you badly. He says he never realized he was being disrespectful because, in his family, his dad always treated his mom like she was invisible, and he thought that was normal. But that's no excuse. We know that. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness after everything we put you through. But if there's any chance you could forgive us, please give us a chance. We've learned. I promise you, we've learned. I deleted the message without replying. 2 days later, another message came, this time from Derek. Eleanor, Morrison called me into his office yesterday. He said several of the guests from the Christmas dinner told him what happened and that they're concerned about my emotional stability and my ability to handle responsibility. He's put me on some kind of professional probation. If I don't show, I can manage my personal life maturely in the next 6 months. Not only will they not make me a partner, but they might fire me. His career. It always came back to his career. I know we made mistakes. I know we hurt you. But did you really want to completely destroy our lives? Was that your intention? Because that's what's happening, Eleanor. Megan cries every night. I'm seeing a therapist because I'm having anxiety attacks at work. Is this what you wanted? What I had wanted was respect. What I had wanted was to be treated like a human being, not an appliance. But apparently, to Derek, the fact that there were consequences for years of mistreatment was a personal attack. The last message that week was different. It was from Megan, but her voice was calmer, more mature. Mom, I've been going to therapy too. The doctor is helping me understand some things about myself that I don't really like. She said I probably developed secondary narcissism as a defense mechanism after Dad died, and that I transferred all my need for control and security onto you without realizing I was hurting you. Secondary narcissism. At least she was starting to understand there was a real problem. She told me something that was really painful to hear, but I know it's true. She said I turned you into my mother and my employee at the same time, and that it was a form of emotional abuse. I never thought of it that way, but she's right. A long pause. Mom, I'm not calling to ask you to come back. I know that would be selfish. I'm calling to ask for your forgiveness. Truly, sincerely, I am sorry. And to tell you that you're right to be away from us. You deserve so much better than what we gave you. That stopped me. It was the first time I heard Megan admit I had a right to be angry. Instead of trying to convince me I was overreacting. If you ever want to talk to me, I'll be here. But I'm not going to bother you with calls anymore. You've suffered enough because of me. For the next 2 months, I received no more calls. The silence was strange at first, after years of constant demands and drama, but gradually I grew to appreciate it. My new life slowly took shape. The apartment was small, but cozy. I had found a part-time job at a local library, something I had always wanted to do, but never could, because I was too busy supporting 2 adults who refused to support themselves. I got to know my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson, a 70-year-old widow who invited me for tea on Wednesdays. Robert Jr., a 40-year-old man who lived alone and helped me with minor apartment repairs in exchange for a home-cooked dinner on Sundays. For the first time in decades, I had friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. One day, while organizing books in my apartment, I found an old photo of Megan when she was 10. She was smiling, her front teeth missing, hugging a doll I had given her for her birthday. Back then, she saw me as her hero. She told me that when she grew up, she wanted to be as strong and good as me. I sat on my small couch, looking at that photo, and for the first time since I left, I cried. Not from sadness, but from grief. Grieving for the daughter I had lost somewhere along the way, for the relationship we had before life, Robert's death, and bad choices turned her into someone I didn't recognize. But I also cried with relief, because I had finally found the strength to choose myself, and that was something the 10-year-old Megan would have respected. 3 months after I left, my phone rang one more time. This time, I decided to answer. Mom? Megan's voice sounded different, softer, more mature, but also more distant, as if she were speaking to someone she respected, not someone she could order around. "Hello, Megan," I replied, surprised at how calm my own voice sounded. "I didn't expect you to answer," she admitted. "I've been thinking about calling you for weeks, but my therapist said I shouldn't contact you unless it was really important." "And is it important?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Yeah, I think so. Mom, I wanted to tell you that Derek and I are getting a divorce." I sat down on my small sofa, processing the information. I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't happy about it either. Despite everything, I didn't want Megan to suffer. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she replied, and to my surprise, it sounded like the truth. "I'm okay. We were in couples therapy for 2 months, and what we discovered is that we got married for the wrong reasons. He wanted someone to manage his life like his mother managed his father's, and I wanted someone to give me the financial security I felt I lost when Dad died. That was an amount of self-awareness I hadn't expected from my daughter. Neither of us really fell in love with the person the other was," she continued. "We fell in love with what we thought the other could give us. And when you left and we had to face the reality of who we really are, we realized we didn't like what we saw." "How is Derek?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Better, actually. He lost the job at the big firm, but he found one at a smaller company where he feels less pressure. He says he's realizing that chasing that lifestyle he thought he wanted only made him miserable. He's living with a roommate now, and for the first time, he's learning to take care of himself." "And you?" "I'm learning too," Megan sighed. "Therapy has been brutal, Mom. The doctor doesn't let me get away with excuses. She's made me see how much I hurt you, how much I hurt myself by becoming someone who only knew how to take, not give." I listened in silence, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. Pride because she was finally facing the truth. Sadness because it had taken so much time and pain to get to this point. "Mom, I want you to know something," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I am never going to ask you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did to you was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I understand now what I lost. I didn't just lose my mother. I lost the strongest, most generous, most unconditional person I will ever know." I felt tears in my eyes, but they were different tears from the ones I had shed during years of frustration and pain. "I also want you to know that I'm okay," she said. "I mean, I'm not okay financially. I'm living in a tiny apartment and working 60 hours a week between the coffee shop and a nighttime cleaning job to pay my bills. But I'm okay emotionally for the first time in years." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, and I meant it. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Are you happy? I mean, really happy? Because if you're not, if there's anything you need, anything at all, I'll find a way to help you. I know I don't have much money now, but..." "Megan," I interrupted her gently, "I am happier than I've been in years." And it was true. In the 6 months since I'd left that house, I had rediscovered who I was when I wasn't constantly worrying about other people's needs. I had read 18 books. I had learned to make pottery in a night class. I had grown a small herb garden on my balcony. I had made friends with other women my age who, like me, were rediscovering their own lives after years of sacrifice. I have a small but beautiful life, I told her. I have my job at the library. I have my friends. I have my independence. I don't need anything else. And us? She asked in a small voice. Is there any chance that someday... I don't know, Megan, I answered honestly. What we built over so many years was broken in a very deep way. I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I understand, she said, and it sounded like she truly did. I just wanted you to know that I've changed. I don't know if it matters to you, but I've changed. After we hung up, I sat on my sofa for a long time, thinking about the conversation. I had heard something in Megan's voice that I hadn't heard in years, genuine humility. Not the manipulative humility she used when she wanted something, but the real humility of someone who had faced her own demons and decided to be better. Did that mean we could have a relationship again someday? Honestly, I didn't know. The damage had been deep and long-lasting, but for the first time in years, I felt that maybe, eventually, we could find a way to know each other as the people we were now, not as the people we had been. A year after that call, Megan sent me a Mother's Day card. It wasn't one of those generic cards with pre-written messages. It was handmade, with a photo of us from when she was little and a note in her own handwriting. Mom, it read, I don't know if I'll ever earn it, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I also wanted to thank you for teaching me, even in the hardest way possible, that self-love isn't selfish. I hope you're having a wonderful life. With love and respect, Megan. I put the card on my refrigerator next to a picture of my herb garden and a drawing one of the kids from the library had made for me. 2 years after I left, I was in my garden on a Saturday morning when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Eleanor? The voice was Megan's, but it sounded nervous. It's me. I'm at the hospital. My heart stopped. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine, she said quickly. I mean, I'm at the hospital, but I'm fine. Mom, I had a baby. The world stood still around me. A baby? A girl. Her voice softened. Her name is Helen. Like Grandma. Remember? Your mom. Of course, I remembered. My mother had passed away when Megan was 2, but I had always spoken of her with love. Mom, Megan continued, I know I have no right to ask you this after everything that happened. But, would you like to meet her? You don't have to. I don't expect you to be a part of our lives if you don't want to, but I thought you should know you have a granddaughter. I sat down in my little garden chair, looking at the herbs I had grown with my own hands, feeling a mix of emotions I didn't know how to process. Who's the father? I asked. A man I met in group therapy, she replied. His name is Michael. He's a nurse. And he's good. He's different from Derek, Mom. He's genuinely good. And does he know? About me? About what happened? I told him everything, she admitted. I told him exactly what kind of person I had been and how I hurt you. He says the fact that I can admit my mistakes is what gives him hope that I've really changed. I thought about my perfect little life, my carefully constructed peace, the freedom I had fought so hard to win. And then I thought about a baby named Helen, who was not to blame for the mistakes her mother had made. Give me a week to think about it, I told her finally. Of course, she replied. Mom, no matter what you decide, I want you to know that I'll understand if you say no. I understand that I've lost the right to ask you for anything. A week later, I was standing outside a hospital room door, holding a small gift I had bought for my granddaughter. I didn't know what kind of relationship we would have, or if I could ever completely forgive Megan, but I knew that some opportunities don't come twice, and that love, sometimes, requires an act of faith. When I walked into that hospital room and saw Megan holding that tiny little girl, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years: genuine responsibility, protective love, and a determination to be better than she had been. Helen opened her little eyes when I held her, and she looked at me with that pure curiosity only newborns have. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. Not everything is forgiven. Some damage never fully heals. But sometimes healing doesn't come from forgiveness, but from building something new on the foundations of what was broken. And as I held my granddaughter, feeling her tiny weight in my arms, I knew I had found something I hadn't been looking for. Not just my own peace, but the possibility of a future that honored both my self-worth and my capacity to love. That night, I went back to my small apartment, to my independent and beautiful life, knowing that I no longer had to choose between loving myself and loving my family. I had finally learned that I could do both, but only on my own terms.